welcome to At America TV. My name is Aninda, one of the guests here in At America. It's really nice to see you all. We hope you all doing well and staying safe at home. For those of you who just joined us for the first time, At America is the U.S. Embassy's American Center, and our mission is to provide a space for young Indonesians to learn more about the United States. We have moved temporarily to a digital platform so you can enjoy our events from the comfort of your own home. On this event, we'll be having cyber threats in the pandemic era. But before we begin, let's break the ice with a little trivia. The question for today is, in what decade did cybersecurity's history begin? Is it A, 1960s, B, 1970s, C, 1980s, or D, 1990s? You can start typing your answer on our social media because in the end of the event, we'll do a live shoutout for those of you who can guess the answer correctly. Other than that, don't forget to take a selfie and tag at America's Instagram account. Alright, before we begin, I would like to invite for the opening remarks Pak John Kim, FBI Legal Attaché from U.S. Embassy Jakarta. Time is yours.
Good evening, everyone, and salamat malam. It's challenging to put on an event like this on a normal day, and as we all know, these shows ain't normal days. So I'm grateful for At America for hosting this event and giving us the opportunity to share information and new ways of fighting the ever-evolving cyber threat. Thank you, Delia, as well for setting this up. We've all had to find new ways of doing business and carrying out our daily lives. However, even during a pandemic, cyber threats don't stop. So the work can't stop either. When things get tough, we adapt, we innovate, and we evolve. October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and what better time to have these great speakers today to discuss and present to you. Dr. Alaluddin, Ibu Sri, Pak Tamar, and Joshua. Today's attendance symbolizes the importance of educating ourselves against this ever-increasing global cyber threat. It's clear that everyone here recognizes this. We thank you for participating and hope you can learn the valuable ways to protect ourselves in this new normal. Cyber threat is real. The top 4 attacks most are likely to face during this pandemic era are business email compromises, malware and ransomware, phishing schemes, and Zoom bombing. So hopefully we don't see any Zoom bombings today. But the biggest question is, how do we fight or address these threats? Or at least in the FBI, the answer is teamwork and ensuring your team is well educated and recognizing and mitigating these cyber threats and vulnerabilities. Facing the monumental task of protecting your vital information while continuing to maintain productivity requires the right balance of resources and knowledge. But most of all, it requires teamwork. We cannot tackle these threat streams alone. The public and private sectors must work together. So it's not a question of if, but when it comes to receiving cyber threats. Teamwork is the key to proactively and reactively address these global threats. We must remain resilient. Besides proactivity addressing threats, we also need to know how to react to these threats. Will you know what to do if you or your team becomes a victim of a cyber threat? Who will you contact? As I tell my team in the FBI, we need to think outside of the box, inside the rules, but outside the box. I'm confident we can get there together. Thank you for having me today, and terima kasih banyak.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Now, please welcome our today's moderator, Bafitri Bintang Timur, researcher from Center for Strategic and International Studies. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good night, everybody. Thank you for our viewers, participants watching us live from the At America platform, as well as I warmly welcome for you that watch us from the U.S. Consulate Medan and Surabaya platforms, and the students from several universities, Universitas Wijaya Kusuma Surabaya, Universitas Pancabakti, Teknik Informatika ITERA, Universitas 17 Agustus Semarang, Universitas Profesor Hygiene, STA IH Muhammad Bima, Universitas Pendidikan Nasional, Universitas Dwi Jendra, Cybersecurity Communities in Indonesia, American Chambers of Commerce, Indonesia Agency for Cyber and Encryption Agency, National Strategy, National Body for Cyber and Encryption Agency, BSSN, as well as Universitas Nasional. I'll welcome you all here. So tonight's panel discussion, we will discuss about the importance of securing networks, protecting critical infrastructure, and as well as coordinating the response for cyber incidents. The purpose of this discussion is to raise awareness about cybersecurity threats and resilience during the COVID-19 pandemic. And for tonight, we're really honored and privileged to have our distinguished speakers. Those are expert, academic, and practitioner in the field of cybersecurity. They are Joshua Stankes from Cybersecurity Division, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, of the Department of Homeland Security, United States. Unisri Bafitri, Deputy Executive Vice President of Telkom Indonesia. Dr. Awaludin Marwan, Senior Lecturer on Cyber Law, Cybersecurity Law, and Data Protection Law at the Bayangkara University of Jakarta. And last but not least, Bapak Damar Jurianto, Executive Director of Southeast Asia Freedom of Expression Network, SafeNet. We will do this three presentation all together, followed by Q&A and discussion. This is a friendly reminder for the speakers to keep their presentation to 10 minutes so we can have some time for question and discussion later on. So before we start, I want to tell participants that you can type your question in the chat box from whatever platform you are tuning in from, whether it's the Zoom or whether it's YouTube. You can just type it on your chat box, and you don't need to wait until the end of all presentation because you might forget your question. And you can also type in both English or Bahasa Indonesia, and I will translate it. We will compile all the questions and raise them to the speakers later. Now, first up, I will give the presentation opportunities to Joshua Stankes from Cybersecurity Division, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, of the Department of Homeland Security, United States. Joshua, you may have the screen.
Thank you for that introduction. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. My name is Josh Stankes, and I work for the Cybersecurity Division at the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, known as CISA. Before I begin, I would like to thank the U.S. Embassy of Indonesia and At America for hosting this event and bringing us together today to share our unique perspectives regarding cybersecurity in the pandemic era. It is truly an honor to join all of you today. From our panelists to participants, I am delighted to connect with such valued partners and colleagues. In an era of dynamic change, one constant has been our trusted partnerships with government entities and organizations within the United States and around the world. This is why, earlier this year, CISA released its first ever international strategy known as CISA Global. If you're not familiar with it, you can find it at cisa.gov/global. Now let's get into the main portion of the presentation today. It will focus on cyber hygiene and cyber safety, building capacity at organizations, and enhancing cyber skills and knowledge of individuals. On this slide, we will discuss some basic cyber safety principles, and I will note that human error accounts for 95% of all breaches, which demonstrates why cybersecurity is a team sport and is everyone's responsibility. I want to go over some of the different tools and resources both individuals and companies can use to continue to improve cybersecurity. If you've heard of the term cyber hygiene but aren't quite sure what it means, it's similar to personal hygiene. It's the typical routines that you do to stay healthy and clean. For individuals, some basic common practices include hovering over links before you click, not trusting every email you get, and password strength. Or should I say passphrase strength? The new best practice might be new to you, is not these passwords with all the different characters and numbers, but it's random words connected together. There's a pretty popular comic, at least in the cyber industry, that shows how 4 random words linked together would take 550 years to crack if there was 1,000 guesses per second, while a traditional password would take 3 days at the same rate. Additionally, these studies show while harder to crack for bots, these passphrases are easier to remember for humans. In terms of cyber hygiene for organizations, one of the main steps is train and educate your users. As I mentioned, 95% of all breaches come from human error, so training users is a must. Additionally, scanning your systems regularly and patch as available. While 0-day vulnerabilities get the headlines, unpatched are the ones that typically get hacked. I do want to point out that Sizzic Sci-Hi scans provides free scans of internet-facing systems to any organization that is interested. These scans provide a list of known vulnerabilities on your systems and remediation guidance. If you or your organization is interested at all, just please reach out. Like I said, these are free. They do take a little while to set up for international customers, but any international customers are welcome as well. Before I get into the Stop, Think, Connect portion, I want to point out that your smartphone or tablet, whatever you use, has over 100,000 times the processing power and 1,000,000 times more memory than the computer used to first land people on the moon. I want you to just think about that for a second. The access that we have to information is unprecedented and is world-changing, but it also means that you can get to an attacker in 1 click in 1 second. So before you trust something new to you, Stop, Think, Connect. Sizzic's Stop, Think, Connect toolkit provides tailored resources for all segments of the community. That includes students young and old, parents and educators, young professionals, older individuals, and small businesses, as well as government and industry. This toolkit's also broken down by topic in case that you're interested in a specific topic, including phishing, online gaming, malware, and a whole host of others. Now on to multi-factor. This is one of my big pushes. If you can do anything and only one thing to protect yourself, use multi-factor authentication. This goes for both individuals and organizations alike. Microsoft's study notes that 99% of all attacks are stopped by MFA, while Google says 100% of bot attacks and 96% of phishing attacks are stopped by multi-factor authentication. With those numbers, I would see hard-pressed not to start using multi-factor. Sadly, in 2021, we have to talk about ransomware. In 2021, a ransomware attack occurs every 11 seconds, and any organization is vulnerable to ransomware. Sizzic's stopransomware.gov, which is linked on the slide, is a one-stop resource where public and private sector entities can find tools, information, and resources to help reduce the risk of ransomware attacks and improve resilience. Once again, multi-factor authentication is super helpful in stopping or at least limiting the scope of these ransomware attacks. All right, on to slide 3. On this slide, I will talk about the long-term strategy and building capacity. Both are impossible without collaboration across all segments of society. I'm going to state it again. Cybersecurity is a team sport. I can't reiterate how important that is. Additionally, Sizzic's collaboration doesn't just stop with entities inside the US, but also stretches internationally, which is why I'm so thrilled that the embassy asked me to be part of this today. The Sizzic Global Initiative details our commitment to working with all stakeholders, including everyone here today, to advance operational cooperation with international partners, to build international partner capacity, to strengthen collaboration with international partners through stakeholder engagement and outreach, and to shape the global policy ecosystem. In terms of capacity building, Sizzic has many, many ways to drive capacity. One of the biggest tools we have and use are our directives. These directives are mandates for federal civilian branch agency government, but their impact is not limited to just those organizations. There are 2 types of directives. The binding operational directives are the strategic long-term directives that build foundational elements to raise the bar across more than just federal. For example, back in late 2017, Sizzic issued a directive that required agencies to implement DMARC. DMARC is an anti-spoofing email technology, which helps to stop phishing. Within a year, this became the fastest deployment of the standard in history by any industry. And to this day, Sizzic is still driving adoption of DMARC beyond federal to help protect users. The second type of directive is an emergency directive. These are more operational, think newly exploited vulnerabilities and newly discovered campaigns. These are fast turnarounds with high demands, but have also been building capacity and improving response times to these different types of incidents. Importantly, both of these types of directives are fully transparent and available at cyber.dhs.gov, which is linked on the slide. These sites and pages include full guidance and FAQs that are not just useful for federal agencies to implement the directives. In the last year alone, it has had over 400,000 unique users from 100 plus nations. We truly believe transparency leads to collaboration and raising the bar in cybersecurity across the board. Two other capacity building products open to the public that we develop are called Capacity Enhancement Guides and our Cyber Insights. While the Capacity Enhancement Guides are not mandates, they are rather guidance on priority topics that we think is important for both federal, state, local, and industry to implement. And the Cyber Insights, while not limited to the directives, but are often translating our directives from federal to state and local and industry and small business to help drive through lessons learned. Lastly, I want to touch on is augmenting the cyber talent pipeline. This is where we go into some truly long-term strategy. The Cybersecurity Workforce 2020 study claims that the industry needs to grow 89% worldwide to effectively defend organizations. So on this slide, I have provided some resources for those that are interested in getting into the field. The Cyber Workforce Training Guide is for current and future cybersecurity and IT professionals and can help individuals chart a path to advance their career. The guide includes information on how to identify, job track, and pinpoint areas for growth, as well as build your cyber skills and maximize your potential with over 140 cybersecurity and professional development trainings. Next, the Federal Virtual Training Environment has developed CISA developed courses available to the public. Most are 1 to 2.5 hours and go from fundamental for cybersecurity to coding to supply chain to cloud computing and more. I do want to give a quick shout out to our new mobile game called Defend the Crown. Defend the Crown helps you develop cybersecurity skills without even knowing possibly. In this game, you defend a castle with a crown inside and secure your secrets from devious attackers by placing clever cyber defenses at strategic points around your castle and prepare for the attacks. If I can leave you with two things, cybersecurity takes collaboration and teamwork on all levels from all organizations to succeed. And please, please start using multi-factor authentication as soon as possible. And actually, one last thing. If you had told me that I would be in the cyber field a decade ago, I would not have believed you. With some of the numbers and stats I provided during this presentation can be intimidating. This field is ever growing and provides an awesome environment to constantly learn and improve upon your skills. If cyber interests you, I would say find a specific path and go down it, but don't be afraid to deviate. And lastly, thank you again to all your time and effort in this opportunity today. And I look forward to questions as well as future opportunities to collaborate.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for your excellent presentation on this TISA strategy that the US has issued and how it is addressed to increase the, cyber awareness through cyber hygiene, as well as show us give us advice in terms of how we can use the internet in a way that it's safe, and as well as a way to prevent attack to what you said, multi-factor authentication, and as well as the long-term strategy in several ways. And most that I remember is the cooperation and collaboration, as well as the effort of capacity building. And maybe it's really interesting to discuss later if you would allow yourself for Q&A. Thank you so much. Next, we will welcome Unisri Bafitri, Deputy Executive Vice President from Telkom Indonesia. Ibu Uni Fitri, we have the same name. The screen is yours.
Thank you, Bafitri. So let me share the presentation first. Hang on. Okay, all right. My name is Bafitri. I work for Telkom Indonesia as Deputy Executive Vice President of Customer Experience and Digitization. But in terms of cybersecurity, I'm also the Vice Chairman of Indonesia Cybersecurity Forum, together with Pak Awaluddin here and also other fellow member of ICSF. So in my role of work, although that I focus on customer experience, it's actually the counterbalance with cybersecurity, because if you want to ensure cybersecurity, then it means that it will not deliver the great customer experience, because it's going to be against each other. So let me talk about Indonesian internet numbers right now. First, we see that consumer profiles are currently concentrated in millennials, which is 43% of the populations, and 64% of online activities through mobile phones. So currently, Indonesia has over 300 millions of 300 millions of mobile phone users, with penetration of 124%, with growth of 4.6% year on year. So this means that anyone can have more than one mobile phones. And in this number, 202 million internet users, with penetration is 70%, with the growth 17%. So this has created what we call it internet economy, in which that new consumers to internet services, economy services, is 37%, and also 93% of new users to use digital after pandemic. So in 2020, internet economy reached US $44 billion, despite headwinds with growth of 11% year on year. But if we thought that pandemic, then the hacker is quiet or not active, it's in contrary to this. Because if we see the numbers here, that during the pandemic, we see that digitization of consumer interaction accelerated in 3 years. And then we see the report from Cominfo, which is the Minister of ICT, here that 5,000 fraud report per week since March 2020, which means almost 200,000 fraud report. But this is just the one that is reported. So usually the number that is non-reported is even higher than this number. And also we look at a report from National Police that it's from 2017 to 2020, we have 16,845 reports. So we can see here that during the pandemic, the number itself is already over the number that is reported in 3 years. So meaning during the pandemic, the case report is increased very significantly. And that is mostly driven by a shift in internet usage patterns from offices to residential areas. So this is also face a challenge, not just for personnel, but also for a company, how they ensure that their employee from home, working from home, also will not possess security threat to the company network, but also themselves, when they work, when they learn, when they study from home, that is also going to be safe. And also due to changes in people's shopping behaviors from offline to online. This has, during the pandemic, many people prefer to go on online shopping, but that's also increased the threat in terms of the cybercrime. So when we look at it, there is a types of cybersecurity threats. It's just, we see here what we call it phishing or spear phishing and zero-day exploit or SQL injection, malware, man-in-the-middle attack, denial of service attack, advanced persistent threats, ransomware, and DNS attack. So this will I'm sure that the other panelists will explain in more detail each of those type of cybersecurity threats. But most importantly I believe is how we can protect ourselves against these threats. So as a company, what we need to do is there are several things that we should do. First of all is, of course, we need to have data backup. So don't never allow that we only have single data that will be very easily being attacked by the hackers. And the second is we need to secure network and data. And then we need to activate data encryption. We use multi-factor multi-factor authentication. This is very important because if we only use single-factor authentication, that will be a lot easier for the hacker to breach the network and also the security. And then replace password with passphrases. Consider cyber insurance. So this is something that is almost forgotten by small and medium companies to have cyber insurance. And also we need to ensure customer protection. Cybersecurity training is another aspect that is also very important because we see there are very limited cybersecurity experts or cybersecurity people that work, that understand, that can also prevent the company from the cyber threats. And also we need to implement secure policies. So there's supposed to be policies in place for the employees working from home, working from anywhere, or working from satellite offices. They need to have a proper security policies. And lastly is comprehensive monitoring system. So this needs to be done not manually, of course, but needs to be done automatically. And how do we protect ourselves? So here, there are a lot of ways that we can protect ourselves. Of course, the first thing that we need to protect is our equipment, our devices. Also, we need to avoid using public networks. So this is quite difficult because if we look at our kids, the first thing they ask when they sit in a restaurant, for example, they ask, it's not the menu. The first question is they're going to ask Wi-Fi password. So this is something that is also vulnerable to security attacks. And also we need to protect our family and also guests that coming to our home. And we need to be cautious with unsolicited emails, text messages, and phone calls. So this is very frequently happen. When we got, like, for example, a message saying that, oh, I forgot, I put the wrong number. Can you give me the authentication because I misplaced the order at the Alfamart, for example. And then many people just giving the password to the one who sent the message. Actually, what they're trying is they try to hack the WhatsApp, for example. And also we need to secure your home network. This needs to be ensured as well. And lastly, we need to ensure that to strengthen our passwords. So these are the things that we need to protect our company and also ourselves. So lastly, that I would like to share is this is something that is very famous during the earliest days of internet. Online, nobody knows you're a dog, which is the famous cartoon by Peter Steiner in New York in 1993. So this actually says that on internet, we can have perils and advantages of online anonymity, and also raise the questions now whether such anonymity is ever truly possible. Of course, anonymity has and will always be at the heart of the internet. Today, anonymity is often associated with cyberbullying. So this is something that young generation should understand, because although that they embrace anonymity and they like to be anonymous, but this is also associated with cyberbullying despite the benefits of anonymity. So when we talk about anonymity, it's a paradox. Because when we see that now, when this New Yorker cartoon proclaimed that on the internet nobody knows you're a dog, actually they were illustrating newfound freedom. Today, 28 years later, it is more timely than ever. It underlines the paradox of our digital identities. On one hand, anonymity is a growing concern since issues of trust online pervade our society and question our democracy. The people we interact with online might as well be anyone, perhaps even a very evolved dog. Understanding audiences, incentives, and reputations construction are critical tools for protection. So, but then on the other hand, many have argued that through the pervasiveness of the internet in our life, the tech giant like Facebook, Google's, Amazon, far too know far too well about ourselves, whether we are our gender, our status, our traveling, our behavior, our favorite trees, and everything. So in the sense, on online, nobody knows you're a dog might as well be the irony of the century. Will we ever reconcile this paradox? So we need to see the next 25 years whether this anonymity will always be a complex, evolving, intrinsic quality of the internet. So with that, I would like to thank you for this presentation, and I open for the question and answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Bafitri, for your presentation on internet statistic in Indonesia, type of cybersecurity threats, and advices on how to protect ourselves in the digital world. I think it is interesting, the last quote that you mentioned, that like the kid these days, anak zaman now, have the term of catfishing when they know somebody that looks very wow online, and when you finally meet them in person, they're not that wow. But then that is a side of the internet. But we know, as you mentioned and touch upon, how the internet has been a driver to push for democracy, for example, and how it becomes, people now know everything about you. I mean, at least the owner of the internet. Thank you so much, and I hope to engage with you later. Next speaker, we're grateful that today we're joined with us by Dr. Awaluddin Marwan. He's a senior lecturer on cyber law, cybersecurity, law and data protection law at the Bayangkara University of Jakarta. Universitas Bayangkara Jakarta. Mas Lulu, I dearly call him. Please, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Bafitri. Very good moderators, and the conclusion is very valid and precise. And like to thanks to the at America, U.S. Embassy, Pak John Kim, Mbak Tamra, Mbak Rosi, and the committee of the event for inviting me. I share the picture with Unisa Fitri in our WhatsApp group, because we have a WhatsApp group together, and the presentation is very comprehensive and very systematic. And with I'd love to come just like her footnote, so just following her statement and opinion. So would like to talk about the cybersecurity legal culture in Indonesia. This is the structure of my presentation today. I start with the data processing for startup. So I share the poster to some incubator startup community. Raising the awareness of data protection and cybersecurity for the startup. But the second title, it may suit for not only startup but also the big company, because I also work to translate the NIST privacy and cybersecurity framework, which is very good for the tools to evaluate, to have a planning on strengthening the cybersecurity and data protections. And I would like to explain about the existing act related to data protections, because as we know, data protection and cybersecurity is very thin, and the connection is very strong. And the same as the previous speaker about the awareness. And the last one, we'd like to remind our beloved, my beloved brothers, the hacker community in Indonesia. This is for startup. The principle of the data protection is about data minimizations. So we need to be selective in order to collect the data. So not all of data we need to collect for the users. So we have to screen ourselves to what kind of data which are relevant to our business. And we have to give a reason for the collecting data, because the principle of data protection is quite difference with for instance EI. As much as data that we have, it's better for the EI, for instance, but for the security and fulfillment of the data or privacy right, data minimization is very good. And second, we need to consent, because we always get messages, for instance, about advertising. But do we give permissions that our data already collected and used by a company, for instance? So the consent is very important. Asking the data to users, if we need the numbers, we ask them, is that possible if we give the advertising, for instance? Because the consent actually is not the GDPR principle only, but it's already mentioned in our civil code. I mentioned this article 1320, which already appeared in the 1936 our civil codes. And the most important is about privacy policy. So many startups they build their platform or mobile app without privacy policy. If we refer to the government regulation number 80 2019 about e-commerce, some articles mention that the privacy policy should be exist in the platform. So sometimes many startup do not have a privacy policy. If they have it, and then the user just agree, and the privacy policy disappear. So it's very difficult to catch up with the privacy policy again if we have a trouble with our data. So this is very important, the consent and the privacy policy. So privacy policy will mention how they collect the data, how they use it, how they will delete it. And some mistake I found in some startup, like at the beginning they asking for ID card, for instance. So ID card is very important actually. So if we do not need collecting the ID card, so we have to select less data that we can ask to the users. So too much collecting data, privacy data, for instance, and the type of blood, for instance, we ask to the user in the e-commerce or educational platform, which is not necessary and it's too much for them. And the case of the illegal fintech, some fintech asking many permissions, accessing locations, file, and so on and so forth. And some, I received the report that they also use the several malware, and like they also implement the remote access Trojan or remote code executions, that which very famous for hacker to take over the device. This is the nice NIST privacy and cybersecurity framework. So we can use it for the tools to have a planning and also evaluate our business, to identify the risk, to minimize the risk, and also to recover if there are any cyber incident. this is like the privacy impact assessment also in the GDPR can be used here, whether we have huge risk or not, and what kind of planning that we prepare if there are any cyber incident. And we can learn the Data Privacy Act despite the privacy bill is still on the discussion in the parliament, and some weeks ago the time is already limited, but we have several sectors that already mentioned the data privacy. And this is the cyber awareness that mentioned by the previous speakers. I not explaining again, but the last line that I have to remind, we can report the cybercrime by ourselves. Like we have a platform check reckoning. We can submit the what is it? The bank account that is potential to be criminal, and also we can submit to the Patrol Cyber. It's easy platform to report the cyber crimes. And the last one that I would like to share about becoming the ethical hackers. I'm not opposing with the black hat hackers, because several conference and international meeting also use the term of black hat hackers, and many times very useful to updating the skill knowledge about the technical things. But I use the cyber criminal instead of the black hat hackers, and in the opposite way, in the opposite side, the ethical hackers. So the Article 30 is quite tricky of the ICT law. So we need permission first before we conduct the penetration testing for the hackers. That's way sometimes hackers in Indonesia cannot do penetration testing easily and freely. That's why I propose that they have to looking for the book bounty in order to scale up their skill. And in the hacker community, in the underground hacker community, also very proud to become a hacker that have prestige in the, if they have a lot of device cases. So the list of devices they already have, it means that they are become great hacker. And I propose to them, to our brother, instead of defacing the platform, we can look for the certifications. So we can help the startup, for instance. We can ask the certificate if we report the bug, or we can access for the training, like certified ethical hacker and so on and so forth. So this is all proposal that I would like to share with some hacker community for my presentation. Bafitri, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Awaluddin Marwan, for your eclectic, insightful, and interesting presentation that covers from data processing for startup, the privacy and cybersecurity network, law relating to data protection that we already have, and as well as cybersecurity awareness. And the last part that is quite interesting for me is the part of the hacker. I think it's interesting to know that hacker can be a good one. And it's also interesting that you refer them as brother, because we don't know, maybe they are dogs, as being mentioned before. But yes, I'm looking forward to discuss more with you in the Q&A session. Thank you so much, Dr. Awaludin. Last but not least, our last speaker that's already quite famous for his activism, Bapak Damar Juniarto. He is the Executive Director of the Southeast Asia Freedom of Expression Network, SafeNet. I would give the screen now to Bapak Damar.
Thank you, Dr. Fitri. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Selamat malam. My name is Damar Juniarto. I'm the Executive Director at SafeNet based in Bali, but I also serve as advisor at Digital Reach based in Bangkok. Both are regional organizations that defending digital rights in Southeast Asia. I also recently worked at working groups on disinformation in Indonesia together with some scholars. We try to look deeply on how the disinformation works and also implied to give impact to to Indonesian people. So first of all, I would like to explain a bit about digital rights, since I already mentioned. So these digital rights or human rights online or rights while online is actually an acknowledgement of human rights in digital space. The United Nations Human Rights Council, through General Comment Number 34, dated in July 12, 2011, emphasized that Article 19.2 on the ACCPR stipulate that the right to freedom of expression applies regardless of frontiers and through any media. So it's further explained that this article includes internet-based model of communication. So thus, in short, people rights need to be all when they are using internet. So based on that perspective, because I'm coming from civil society organization, so based on that perspective, regarding cyber threats in the pandemic era today, especially in Indonesia, the main issue is we are living in the constant threat. It is like we are sleeping with the enemy. For those who very lucky, probably like me, we'll prepare ourselves to learn and to practice digital security to reduce the cyber threats. But I believe many people didn't know that the basic principle of digital security start with digital hygiene, creating a strong password with passphrase. That's the first one that already mentioned by previous speakers, but also exercising encryption and choosing secure communication, and etc. So I will start my presentation with the same title, that living in the constant threats as the key issues. If we look at the recent data breach incident by incident of data breach, actually happens where the next incident have a bigger number than the previous one. The biggest data leak ever happened in Indonesia was data breach over BPJS Kesehatan, or state-owned enterprises on health insurance, where 297 million users' data leaked and then sold in the dark market. So I must say to you that it happened almost like a new normal. It's nothing new. And the incident is followed by no clarity and transparency over data breach investigation, whether the user's data were finally safe or not. So if we look back, some of the cases, like the distribution of our president vaccination certificates that circulate through social media, actually starts from how easy it is for everyone to find a person valid ID card number. If you try to Google for Joko Widodo ID card in the search engine, then you will find his ID card number easily. So if the same thing is also experienced by majority of Indonesian people, that's the reality, right? This may have started with someone exposing the ID card, but also maybe the owner himself posted on the internet without knowing the danger of distributing ID card online. So I didn't know until now how many years this situation has been going on, but I think the key issue, the two key questions related to this, is there any willingness from data controller to protect users' data and put it as a top priority? That's the first question. And the second question is the obligation to protect users' data in the absence of privacy data law that we don't have until now. With no data protection law in the horizon, how to oblige data controller, especially when the data controller is the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Internal Affairs, or even Ministry of ICT? That's the reflective questions. The second issues I will talk about. Recently, Indonesian government invite 11 private sectors from ride-hailing to payment system to link with Peduli Lindungi, Indonesia contact tracing apps that launched last year in March 2020. Even yesterday, one of the special staff of Minister ICT very proud tweeting that Peduli Lindungi have more than 60 million downloaders. And then Peduli Lindungi will be the next unicorn, he said. Well, it is not a rocket science. You don't have to wonder why, because the 16 million downloaders of Peduli Lindungi is actually coming from the new mandatory since September 2021. To travel, people have to download the Peduli Lindungi. If you want to go to the mall or public recreation, you need to download Peduli Lindungi. But the real question is, which one is important? Providing all-in-one COVID-19 apps with this payment system or protecting the contact tracing data? I think from these questions, we know that there is no clarity grand strategy from this application, especially this question is rose after the potential security leak found in eHack electronic health alert card, and then followed by Peduli Lindungi. What we can observe in the terms of protecting privacy, there are no precautions taken before. Obviously, there is no grand strategy with the setting of privacy by design or privacy by default, something that very important in protecting consumers' data. Or the second one is about privacy by standards, or on the third one is about data protection impact assessment. So the absence of adequate preventive measures in protecting users' privacy can be also observed on the eHack cases. The Ministry of Health is not doing what data controllers are supposed to do when data users provide their personal data. For example, trying to hash keywords, or to hash the email, or to hash other sensitive information stored in eHack. So back to Peduli Lindungi, the key issue here is about the centralization of data is actually very, very risky in perspective of cybersecurity. Why not decentralization of data to make it more harder for hackers or bad actors to harm users' data? The second one is about users' consent. When third party invited to use the data that's been collected for the purpose of contact tracing, have they been informed that their data will be used and doing cooperation with the 11 private sectors? And the third one is about transparency, independent security audit. Have it ever done before? Next slide. I will talk about in the situation where protection of users is absent. It is very shocking that on November 2020, the Ministry of ICT released a new regulation named MR5 on electronic system operators related to content moderation. EFF, Electronic Frontier Fund, said that Minister Regulation number 5 is the most invasive of human rights. So the reason why EFF said this, and followed by many organizations, including SafeNet, we are looking on the potential misuse when this with MR5 allowing the all private electronic system operators that accessible in Indonesia, including social media and others content sharing platform, digital marketplace, search engine, financial services, data processing services, and others will give will comply with this MR5, and then that means that they have to give obligation to terminate access whenever the government said that the content inside the platform, inside the electronic service operators is prohibited electronic information and electronic documents. And then the second one is about the timing procedure of the terminating access is really not very not that good, because it's only give limited time for in emergency they have to take down content less than in 4 hours. So for urgent request, MR5 requires the company to take down content for within 4 hours, and for all other prohibited content they must do so within 24 hours of being notified by the ministry. If they fail to do so, the regulators can block the service, and in the case of service providers that facilitate users generated content is imposed substantial fines of from 100 until 500 million rupiahs. So in short, MR5 is harming users' privacy, freedom of expression, and also users' right of feeling safe. So thank you, everyone. If you have questions or comments, let's discuss this further on Q&A session. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Fitri.
Thank you so much, Bapak Damar, for your presentation. That's really comprehensive on the situation of our digital right now, and how does it means to see the shift of the internet that was a platform for freedom of expression, to push change for the government, to be perhaps as a platform to express as well as to demand transparency, have changed as perhaps the government is trying to protect in terms of protecting the data, as well as perhaps in the times of COVID to fight the misinformation, perhaps. But I'm looking forward to engage with you in our discussion. And thank you so much. And we already have several questions right now. And we have, maybe I read one question for each speaker so they can have time to think before I call them to answer. For Mr. Joshua, I would like to, there's a question from from the participant in the chat saying that well, if you can say what's the benefit to ensure the cybersecurity and perhaps because it's for people, it is might be complicated, especially when they don't have technology, education or background, and perhaps because the industry is always also releasing product. Can perhaps this creation of pushing the industry, cyber industry, to have security by design to prevent backdoor, as well as a way that we can like push forward, and perhaps the more also if you can suggest what can Indonesia and the US do to collaborate and cooperate closer in the terms in the field of cybersecurity. So that's for Mr. Joshua, and for Unisri Safitri, I see that I see that women in the field of cybersecurity is quite rare. I see you as the only women speaker here. I want to know how is women fare in the field of cybersecurity? How do you see women capacity and perhaps their situation in facing this pandemic, and maybe you can share that from your experience as women involved in cybersecurity. And for Dr. Awaludin, you mentioned about the bug bounty program presentation. Can you perhaps elaborate this more? And because some a participant would like to hear it more, because they don't know about this. They only know when you report about a bug, you get tuti, top, terima kasih, gitu kan. How can you explore there? And last but not least, question for Pak Damar is from the concern of digital right perspective. What's your reflection about this, the data breach incident in Indonesia, especially when especially when the government trying to balance as well, and you're mentioning about the government trying to limit the information available in platform, but doesn't it government needs to balance to address misinformation and disinformation of COVID? But of course, we would also want the internet as a place to enable freedom of expression. So those the question I throw to you. Now I give the first first opportunity to Mr. Joshua. Mr. Joshua Stankus, the screen is yours. I guess if Mr. Joshua is not ready yet, maybe I can continue to our second speaker, if you're ready to answer. Ibu Sri.
Okay, all right. So during this, even before this pandemic, women has been targeted as a cyber threat. So a lot of victims of cyber threats are more into women. However, with this pandemic, more and more threats, as we seen from the previous presentation, more and more threats are increasing during this pandemic, and also because lots of women are involving in online transaction from home. For example, shopping from home. They are doing many activities from home. So they are being the target of the cyber threat. However, in terms of awareness, not many women are aware of cybersecurity, let alone to be able to protect themselves. So if we look at the number of women that is working in the cybersecurity field, in Asia itself, it's less than 10%. So it's even less than number of women in other area like artificial intelligence or in ICT, for example. So I think this is very important for all stakeholders, from government, media, to association, to companies, to increase cybersecurity awareness, not just for company scope, not just for the society, but more emphasis into women. So this is something that I think should be done by all of us here in this panelists. I see a lot of people from representative from different stakeholders. This is something that is our responsibility to build cyber security awareness among the society, especially for women and also children. Because not only about cyber threat, because as Pak Damar mentioned about the freedom of speech, for example, the regulation, the current regulation is actually not many young people understand about the current regulation of the UU ITE, for example. So this is something that is also needs to be built, because this is something need to be educated, because otherwise this pandemic we see lots of hoax or misinformation that is distributed, but not many people are aware of the consequences of forwarding of information that is not good, that is not secure for them as well. So I think that's my thoughts about women in terms of the in the cyber.
Thank you, Uni Fitri. I would like to give the opportunity to answer to if Josh is not here yet. Maybe, Josh, are you with us? I see you're unmuting yourself.
I am. Sorry about that. Had a little computer issue there. So the question was about how I spoke pretty extensively about individuals' responsibilities to maintain cybersecurity hygiene, and whether there's any work going on to kind of push the tech industry. I do want to kind of footstop that cybersecurity is a human industry. As I mentioned, 95% of all breaches occur due to human error. So the steps that we take each day can create a positive impact on the future and personal of organizational security. Having said that, in my time in the US government, there has been a growing and concerted effort to work more closely and collaborate with industry. The recent cyber executive order that came out this summer is an example of where organizations have to meet a certain security standards to do business with the federal government. Obviously, the first intent of that is to secure the federal government, but as the largest purchasers of IT software in the world, we hope that trickles down, those standards trickle down beyond the federal government into industry and state and local and beyond even just the US. Additionally, there was a meeting at the White House this August where major tech companies pledged to do more concerning cybersecurity, including baking in security into the design and not requiring customers to buy security features. During this meeting, Google, Microsoft, and IBM all made substantial commitments to this, including money and resources. So that's another way that the US government's pushing to get security baked into software. And I think the second part of that question was, what can the US and Indonesia do together? As I've said before in this, collaboration is the king of the cyber world. Specifically, CISA understands that cybersecurity is an inherently international mission that requires our nations to work across borders to share information about threats. CISA remains actively committed to working with Indonesia to address some of the underlying challenges that create risk in the digital ecosystem. We want to continue to strengthen collaboration with Indonesia as well as other foreign counterparts to enable a common understanding of threats and hazards through information sharing and increased preparedness for the shared responsibility of protecting vital infrastructure information systems. So all in all, just continuing to collaborate, increasing the collaboration, increasing information sharing, and keeping channels open.
Thank you so much, Josh. Very succinct, very clear. Next opportunity I will give to Dr. Awaludin Marwan to explain about the hackers.
you like when I talk about hackers, and you may be big fan of hacker community, Bafitri. Yes, but Bounty is very good program actually. As Bafitri say that hacker invited to have test the security systems within the platform, and some platform also very famous as a we know like a HackerOne or BookCrowd. They provide a huge bounty or huge reward with a sum of money, and it's very good to exercise. The, the hacker need to be patient. Like if we're not finding the bug, then we can try again and again until we find a new one and report it. The book bounty is not really famous in Indonesia. Despite we have a platform like a cyber army. Cyber army is the good one also, like an ecosystem that providing the tools for connecting between the hackers and the industry, and we need to encourage and support the cyber army or other platform to make the book bounties become the traditions in the cyber security in Indonesia. And sometimes if the hackers getting difficulty to follow the bounty program, it's a bit tricky in Indonesia because not all of platform ready for a bounty, because platform need to update or develop the huge server, for instance, because sometimes startup at the beginning use very limited servers. If the hackers directly attack the platform, then the platform not ready for it, so it causes a damage for the platform. For instance, if the hackers use the automatical tools like Augmenting, Suite, or others automatic tools, it's very heavy for the servers, because at the same time they deliver a lot of requests, and it's very hard for the new startup company to receive the attack. So hackers may ask the permission first, for instance, if they have the good willing to help the startup. But the good startup can try the platform like Cyber Army if they have enough money, and then they can submit the application to the platform in the international level like HackerOne. Several startup, a huge startup in Indonesia use BookCrowd, for instance, like Gojek or other platform, Traveloka, in order to invite hackers to help them. And then I'd like to add Uni Bafitri. Actually, I already asked her about. It's very seldom finding a woman in the technology, not only in cybersecurity. For instance, I open recruitment for the IT developer, and most of them are male IT developers. I only find one woman IT developers, and I keep to give more opportunity to women in the community. And Bafitri may be the best idol for the woman in the technology. And also, I just get some news from one of director in the PSSN, the Indonesian Cyber and Crypto Agency, which initiate the platform called a Woman in Cybersecurity, and inviting several female speakers to share their experience and knowledge in technology. So it's very good one in order to achieve the SDGs as well. So we need more impact to women, to empower women in the technological field. Bafitri, maybe Bafitri also one of the best researchers, thinker in technology.
Thank you. You're so kind, Dr. Awaludin. Now, thank you. I would give the opportunity to Bapak Damar to answer the question on how to balance the treatment to prevent or address misinformation, disinformation, as well as we can still have that freedom of expression. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Fitri. I think the question is really related to the how to limit freedom of expression, while freedom of expression is related with the derogable rights. So, Toby Mendel, as the professor of Center of Law, suggests that the limitation of freedom of expression, including the freedom of expression online, should be based on the three-part test. So the first one, it should be provided by law. So there is a specific law that explaining what is the limitation of this action that wants to be regulated. And then the second one is about necessity, and also the third one is about proportionality. So in the case of disinformation and misinformation in Indonesia, or people just simplify it into hoax, there is unclarity. If we are talking about the law, so far people try to connect that with ITE law, but I'm pretty sure that actually in ITE law, berita bohong is only related with the consumer's info. It's about when you selling something that is not true, the ingredients, that means that you're spreading berita bohong. So it cannot be used for this specific misinformation and disinformation. So apparently ITE law cannot be used for this one, and then people try to look for try to connect that with the hate speech. So disinformation and misinformation is a part of hate speech, and then they find a way to criminalize people for the purpose of hate speech. But in the perspective of three-part test, this is something not really not a standard. Right now, at the moment, people, the law enforcement also try to relate misinformation and disinformation with Article 14 and Article 15 from the Penal Code year 1946. Is an old one, and they try to connect this with something that creates public disorder. So there is no clear definition of disinformation and misinformation so far for Indonesia. If we try to compare with Singapore, that have POFMA, and Malaysia have Akta Berita Tak Benar, we are really far behind those our neighbor countries. So the questions on the first one, rule by law, I think that's something that need to be addressed if we really want to make a balance between the freedom of expression and limitation of spreading of disinformation and misinformation should be followed by issuing or passing a new law about misinformation and disinformation. And then the second one is about proportionality and necessity. Since there is a tendency in our law that everything must be end to put someone in jail, instead of proposing them to learn or educate or doing social works as a solution of a punishment as when they spreading misinformation and disinformation, I think that's something is also need to be addressed. If we try to follow the new proposal coming from the government, that everyone who spread misinformation hoaxes, then they have to go to jail for maximum 10 years, and they have to pay 10 billion rupiah as a penalty. I think the proportionality is also a big questions. And then the second one is about the necessity is also need to be questioned. What is the purpose of this law actually? What is the end that we want? Are we going to end the misinformation and disinformation, or rather that we have a new aggressive and also repressive law based on these issues of the rising of disinformation and information in Indonesia? And that's the first one. Is that the only question, right?
I think that is for now, because we're really running out of time, and there's many interesting questions that I think would be useful to address. So I would not give the question to specific people, but if you would like to answer, I will float them around. And for those that haven't been answered, please, if you can answer them, please try. Oh, I just got information that if you don't mind, we will extend this discussion for another 15 minutes. I need to ask whether the speakers are okay. Yes?
Okay.
Going once? Okay.
Sure.
Thank you. Josh? Is it okay if we extend? Okay, good. Damar, Padamar, yeah. Yep. Okay. Okay. So we have interesting questions here. So I'm just gonna raise this, and if you have the answer, please answer it. So one, I want to follow up regarding. Initiative on the capacity for women, because I think two speakers think that is important. Is there any example of how we can increase the women in knowledge and work in cybersecurity? That's it. For another question is regarding cybersecurity from viewers that perhaps, and maybe a lot of viewers here want to know, how do we know when our account has been hacked, and what are the steps to deal with? And the next question would deal with reporting. So if we experience, and then after we know we're being hacked, and then there's victims of cyber crimes, maybe this is more of a legal, maybe Dr. Awaludin would be knowing, or if any of you would want to answer as well. If the victim of cyber crimes, and what should that person do, whether they can go to the police and whether they can restore their losses going forward. So I guess that is the three question that I float around. Now I see raised hand from Padamar, so the screen is yours.
Thank you. I think I will answer the first question related to women and girls in online, yeah, and during this pandemic. cases of online gender-based violence spike over 1,000 times compared to 2019. That based on our observation. So SafeNet actually right now have an initiative to open monitoring, national monitoring on the online gender-based violence. And not only that, because right at the moment we are providing a platform, digital platform, where women and girls can learn about some of the cases of online gender-based violence. The big one is about non-consensual intimate images distribution, or NCII. Actually, you can learn about that. How to protect yourself if your pictures is being spread without your consent, and how to report to the platform. Even we give services to help to escalate the issues to the platform, since SafeNet is trusted partner for Google, Twitter, and Facebook in Southeast Asia. So that's something that we provide right now, and people who interested on this and need guidance how to deal with these cyber threats that focuses on the gender-based violence can visit our website named awaskbgo.id. So I will try to write it on the chat so everyone can look right now. Is actually a task force between SafeNet and National Commission Anti-Violence Against Women, Komnas Perempuan, and also Kemen PPA, the Women and Children Ministry, and Cybercrime Polri. So we gather all the stakeholders to join in hand to tackle the spiking of gender-based violence online during pandemic. So one initiative that I hope everyone is happy to visit the website to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Damar. Pak Damar, is there any other taker for the question on capacity of women in cyberspace? Because I don't want to be the two Fitris that can speak on cybersecurity, which is quite sad. And thank you, Pak Damar, for mentioning that the reason that perhaps this woman cannot go forward and online is because they're afraid of being the victim of gendered violence online. So maybe while we're waiting for any takers, I want to also remind you the other question that are available is to answer is the question of how do we know our account has been hacked, and then what's the step to deal with this? If any of cyber experts. Oh, Ibu Sri, yes, you're unmute your mic.
I just want to add answering about the how do we increase women capability. One of the questions, I think the second question that you raised in cybersecurity. So pandemic actually has possessed threats to humanity and also slow down the economy, but it also has opportunity for those who are willing to learn. For example, that currently the most important thing about cyber threat and cybersecurity is the awareness of the women itself, the importance to protect themselves. Because once they are aware of it, then they will try and learn themselves. There are many platforms provided for the women, one of that has mentioned by Pak Damar. But in terms of a proper education on cybersecurity, there are a lot of education sources that women can use. For example, there are a lot of educational free or educational platform provided like Harvard X or Coursera and other free online courses. On top of also YouTube that gives education on how to protect yourself against a cyber threat. So the foundation is, of course, the willingness of those women to enhance their capability. Because although that my background is telecommunication engineering, for example, and I have a proper education in cybersecurity. But nowadays, with the internet explosion, with a lot of contents available online, then we can learn it ourselves. So that is the most important thing, to be able to motivate ourselves to learn. So this is something that I would like to share.
Thank you, Ibu Unifitri, for your answer. I saw that Josh is unmuting himself, so I want to know whether you want to answer any of the question that I float around.
I was just going to add, from Sizzic's perspective, we are pushing diversity very, very aggressively as a way to promote talents and further our skill base and pipeline. So fully on board. I know it's not the same exact dynamics as in Indonesia, but we are also pushing diversity very strongly.
Yes, thanks. And I have this follow-up question for you, if you don't mind. Somebody was curious about what you mean when you said cybersecurity is a team sport multiple times. Can you provide some concrete example, especially if it's a team sport? Who's the judge? Yeah. What are we winning?
So, well, hopefully we're winning and not losing, but I can provide probably one example of when we lost and one of when we're winning. I'll start with the negative one to end on a positive note. But there was a hack in the U.S. of a major U.S. retailer called Target. It had over 1,800 stores, annual revenue of $7.2 billion US. It revealed over 110 million customers exposed to all their data. And it was done through a third-party vendor, an air condition control mechanic, a local company that just had access. Exactly. Basically, they had a portal to make payments from Target to that company. And the small company was hacked, and then the hackers waited till they got the credentials and then went into Target. So when I say team sport, you can't just defend yourself. You have to make sure the people that you're using, that you're working with, that you're collaborating with are defending as well. In terms of a positive, and just about a year ago, September of 2020, we released a directive requiring agencies to do a vulnerability disclosure policy. The intent behind this is to collaborate with the public. And when I say public, I mean the world public, not just the American public, to help find vulnerabilities on federal systems. So it provides guidelines, kind of like the bug bounty, but there's no money involved. So it provides guidelines for ethical hackers to go onto sites and say, I found this vulnerability, send it to the agency, and then the agency can fix it. That way, we keep improving security. We have all the scans and all that, but we know nothing's ever perfect. So having individuals with the skills to go out and find these and report them back is starting to pay off big dividends. We just started getting the reports in. I'm not going to share them yet, but they're looking good. And from the perspective of the user, it's a really good way to start building your resume. You're legally going to do this. You're helping federal entities, and you're getting recognized for it. So that's a positive how teamwork works in cybersecurity.
Thank you, Josh. Appreciate it. I would like to give the opportunities to the speaker that hasn't answered. I hope I don't caught you by surprise, Dr. Awaludin. Would you want to answer the question I float before about checking if our account has been hacked, and if we found that, what's the step to deal with this, especially when you mentioned about cyberpolicy and whether they even got able to restore their losses, perhaps if there some capital loss. Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah. Thank you. Many platform or application provided to people who can find that their email or their personal information already get breached in some platform, like Monitor Firefox or other platform that we can type our email, and which platform that our personal data already breached and sold in the dark web. So always we have to, as many cybersecurity experts remind us to change our password frequently. So we have to be aware also after we got a breach, and then we have to change our password and activate multi-factor authentication and so on and so forth. And I already mentioned that we can report to the patrolling cybers, and we can come to the police officer also. Unfortunately, the cyber division is not appear in the district level. So the lowest cyber divisions in the Indonesian national police in the level of provincial governments because of the limitation of the technical issue, for instance. But we can use the district level or the lowest police officers, and they can submit to the central level, and they can analyze it. If the damage is very huge, and then the police may take into account and pay more attentions. And for getting the compensation for the damage, the ICT law actually provide the tools, the legal framework, such as the Article 26 of the ICT law, that somebody who already received damage from the data breach, that they can sue the platform. So we have several cases already, but as not as we can learn from several case law. If we study in Europe, it's very plenty of case law that we can learn, but in Indonesia, it's very few of them. But we can encourage people to use their right. If they already get breached, they can also sue to the platform if they lost something.
Thank you, Dr. Awaluddin Marwan, for your answer. There's a question follow-up to Pak Damar, that as you were mentioning, their concern of the law and how they could be, it would be good if the law can be rectified or amended. And there's a question that asks about ITE law, the information and transaction, electronic information and transaction in Indonesia, and the question, and that law needs to be improved as well. So the question is, how do people, everyday people, can push for the law to be revised and can be actually used as protection for something relevant in a way that, especially when they're just like a common people. Maybe I can ask you to answer that in 1 minute. Thank you.
Yes, I can. 1 minute, right, Dr. Fitri? So the answer is like this. People are often confused that our struggles or our demand on revising the IT law is to get wipe of this IT law. That's not our struggles. What we want is we want to have a better internet regulation. And within the internet regulation, there are some issues over the eight articles inside the IT law. So not all of them are problematic. We need to preserve the Article 26 because it is important to protect the from the cyber threats and cyber attacks. We have to also maintain other articles which is already good. Those articles that we want to be revised is actually to make it more rigid, to make it more following the standard, the human rights standards, which is when you try to limit people rights, you have to make it clear what kind of activity that you want to aim, what kind of activity that you are mentioning about. If you're saying about hate speech, so you have to follow the Rabat Convention of Law. If you want to limit the limit on the threats, you must follow the cyber crimes, COC, Convention of Cyber Crimes. So we have to make it more better than this existing one. So that's the first thing. So hopefully my short answer will address those questions from.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pak Damar, for making it short. Now, I want this next question being answered short as well by perhaps Jos and Unifitri. In regards of, can you compare pre-pandemic and in the pandemic right now? What's the situation of the cyber threat, and whether the landscape is changing, or what should and then having the knowledge of that landscape changes, what are we in the right spot currently? 1 minute each, so maybe who want to go first? Josh, you unmuted, so maybe I can give it to you.
I will say the cyber threat was very real before the pandemic, but the pandemic has accelerated it and brought it to the news. The one thing worse, or I've seen the most, that's changed the most, is ransomware has exploded. And in particular, we're seeing ransomware as a service grow. And that's where these very adept ransomware groups are now creating products and selling to people with less skills that they can then go out and use their ransomware with guidance. And then they split the profits. And this is allowing a much lower level of skilled labor, if you will, to attack organizations of any size. So that's been one of the big changes. I do think, I'm going to harp on multi-factor again. It's really helpful. It's not going to stop everything, but it will help in ransomware, and also just backing everything up as much as possible.
Okay, thank you, Josh. And then Unifitri, 1 minute.
Thank you. Yeah. Adding to that point, ransomware is much more a threat to the companies, but I think most importantly during pandemic is increasingly about hoax that is, and misinformation that is not just causing loss of the country in terms of decreasing in terms of economic, but also the capability of the government to reduce the rate of pandemic. So during the earliest pandemic, for example, we heard a lot of misinformation that COVID is like conspiracy, COVID doesn't exist, vaccine is like benefiting, what is it, the guy, Bill Gates, for example. So that kind of hoax that is not only helpful, but also increasingly in terms of the numbers of COVID, and now even so that there are many people call it like in the pandemic, there is a new term called COVID idiots, but that's the thing that we need to prevent, because otherwise, without that, it's very hard for the government to eradicate COVID in Indonesia.
Thank you, Unifitri. Last question, Dr. Awaludin, 30 seconds. Can you answer regarding, is there any international legal protection between countries that cooperates in terms of personal data protection, and how can it be used perhaps in Indonesia? And then the second is, how about if the bounty hunter already report the bugs, but they're not being addressed? Okay, so that's it. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Okay. Actually, there is no international tools in the legal field that cover the data protection on or the cybercrime. But we already have the convention on cybercrime in Budapest 2001. And some of article already same as the ICT law that we have with several adjustment. And we have in the region the ASEAN privacy framework as well, but we a bit late to have our own data protection act. So we need for the new one as an umbrella, the Data Privacy Act. About the bounty, actually, we need to educate or be encourage the hacker to be more patient to respond that their help is not being respected by the company, for instance, or industry. Some years ago, actually, we already had a program that called voluntary vulnerability disclosure program presented by the BSSN, which was a very good program actually. So hacker can submit the report to the BSSN and they analyze and get certificate for the BSSN. Oh yeah, you get the good, nice virtual background. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's my answer.
Yeah, apology. I don't really want to cut you off, but I'm already running out of time because time is not on our side right now. But thank you tonight. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Bafitri. Thank you, Dr. Awaludin. Thank you, Bapak Damar, for your excellent presentation. And I would like to also thank you, the U.S. Embassy in Jakarta, the U.S. Consulate in Medan and Surabaya, as well as America. And participant that is very patiently still staying here. Thank you so much. We hope that this discussion is useful for you, and we hope to see you again in the next discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our speakers and moderator for today's insightful session. It's been great having you with us. Earlier in this event, we asked our audience, the question was, in what decade did cybersecurity's history begin? And the correct answer is B, 1970s. Shout out to Nadia Cahyadi from YouTube for answering correctly. Thank you to everyone who has participated to our question of the day. Don't forget to tune in next time and catch a chance to get a live shout out from us. Now, you may be wondering, how can I develop an awesome idea with a place like this? Very easy. You can simply go to our website at www.atamerica.org.id, select create a program, and go collaborate with us. All the events proposal will be reviewed and your event might be featured here soon. While you are there, you can subscribe to our newsletter to get our weekly event updates. Well, it's been fun. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye. You can follow our social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AT America. You can get fun content and our weekly event updates. And also, while you're there, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for joining us again. My name is Aninda, and see you next time. Bye-bye.